All right, ladies and gentlemen, my next guest. He is a comedian, a father, a husband, an activist. He is a man for all seasons and a man for all people. You may have seen him on stage in a local comedy club or on the YouTube series Teacher's Lounge. His name is Ted Alexandro. Welcome, Ted.
Thank you, buddy. Good to
How,
be with you.
how was that? Was that nice and professional?
That was lovely. Yeah, no, that was as professional as I've received an intro.
Excellent. Yeah. And I just riffed that because, I don't believe in writing stuff down. Um, all right. So let me bring this back up. So I know we don't have you for too long. I just put up random memes for background, by the way. If you find this one too disturbing, let me know. Um,
That's fine.
Excellent. So, Ted, you're just outside of New York City. You're in population density central
Yes.
and very close to an international airport.
Yes, indeed. Not far at all.
So, how are things on the ground where you are? What is the general disposition of people in the neighborhood?
Well, I can't really speak to the neighborhood because I have not been of the neighborhood for probably about a week now. We've pretty much been staying inside. We look out our windows. We did see an ambulance pull up yesterday, and that was a little harrowing because one of our neighbors, we don't really know too many folks. We're somewhat new to this specific area, but somebody came out of an apartment wearing a mask, and then the ambulance pulled up. They each had masks on, as you would expect, and they took somebody away. So we tried not to stare, but it was hard not to see it at least. And so that was we deduced that is likely coronavirus related, but we could be wrong. But that's kind of where your head goes these days, right? Like everything is like if I have a cough, I'm like, I guess I have it.
Yeah. The paranoia part is almost as bad as the rest of it. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like I'm as guilty of it as everybody else. Like I'm somewhat freaked out. Not freaked out in the general sense, like I'm going to add to the general panic, but
Well, I think panic is called for at a certain stage. I think we've probably gone too far the other way for the past month, where they're trying to placate people, they're trying to allay any fears, and telling us even as recently as like 4 or 5 days ago to like go to parks and order takeout and all these things. I mean, I think a little panic into the bouillabaisse would be healthy at this point.
have you been keeping up and watching our good friend Comrade Trump's daily speeches on his path toward socialism?
I try my best to avoid him, but these days he's so prominent that and to a certain extent necessary. So I have seen snippets of some of his press conferences and whatnot, and he does not disappoint in the sense that he does disappoint. He never gets it. He never gets it right. So yeah, I mean, even something like this, right, that is kind of served up on a platter if you're a politician, much like 9/11, that turned Bush and Giuliani into national heroes. These types of situations are on a platter if you just don't fuck it up, to kind of get into the public's good graces. But he's, somewhat unsurprisingly, he's even messing this one up.
Yeah, that's actually a very cogent take on it. I can't really hit anything on that. I mean, I watch them all, unfortunately, because I literally do this for a living. And,
Right.
there was kind of like a wave to it. Like I was just telling everybody before he came on, like he started out cool the first few days. Like I feel like somebody like told him a story about the FDR fireside chats during, the Depression and World War II. And like in his head, he got this image of, I can be the benevolent overlord. Like, the people, they'll love me. They'll think it's tremendous. They'll say they've never seen anything so tremendous. I'll do that. And he tried that for like 3 days, and then he looks on Twitter and everybody's like, you're a piece of garbage. And he's like, well, fuck that. I'm going to go back to fascism. Get Fauci out of here. You know, bring me William Barr. Oh
Yeah,
Jesus.
yeah. I mean, it just the fact that this pandemic is so intricately, uh, obviously dependent on science, that is clearly not his wheelhouse. So I think, even again with him, if you look back, these things are not going to age well. Like his first response of being like, when the weather warms up, the virus will die. These kinds of asinine, just like he's so used to talking out of his ass, and it's ordinarily it's somewhat inconsequential. But with this, it's very consequential. So yeah, a lot of these things are not going to age well.
Yeah, much like Trump. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, when you zoom out, sometimes don't you wonder, like, man, it is on some level this guy the perfect person to be leading the United States of America, who has really kind of just been circling the drain for decades? Is he not the perfect incarnation of a dullard and adult to be at the helm?
I mean, he is kind of like the hood ornament on like a 1950s car that used to be dope, and now it's just like held together by rust attached to rust. But
Yeah.
it still has that gleaming hood ornament. Yeah, that's a fair analogy for Trump. I could go for that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Much like a lot of the vehicles that you see in Cuba, right? That people are always the word Cuba is like this knee-jerk thing. They tried to sink Bernie a million different ways, but that was one of them. But I just noticed on Twitter that Cuba is sending a bunch of doctors to I don't know if it was to Italy or to Iran, but
I believe to
yeah.
they sent them to China. Now, Cuba and China have been working together in biochem since the 80s.
Oh wow.
So a lot of cures that you see and you hear about are actually like there was a lung cancer cure for a specific type of lung cancer that they figured out in Cuba. The wonder drug that Trump keeps talking about, that's a malaria drug. That
Okay.
drug was actually that was found by Cuban researchers and then mass produced in China. And then they actually tweaked it and improved it when they had another malaria outbreak in the 80s. So Trump touting this amazing cure is literally Cuban scientists manufacturing in China, and then sending it over to America along with 500,000 test kits that were left over from China that China gave to Italy that Italy is now giving to us. And he's standing on stage going, our corporate partners are great. They've never been greater. Look, CVS, Walmart, we got it covered. Oh, what's that? Cuba, China. Oh, okay. That's fine too. Like,
Yeah, yeah. It kind of doesn't it lift the veil off of so much of the bullshit rhetoric that the conditioning and the propaganda that we've received, both in terms of countries, but certainly in terms of capitalism. The constant barrage of free market stuff, and and again, the stuff that Bernie has centered with his campaign in terms of even like the most modest versions of socialism are now whatever everyone's kind of calling for at the bare minimum.
yeah, no, it's kind of, the expression, there's no atheist in foxholes. Well, apparently there's no capitalist during economic crisis. All of a sudden, everybody's down with the socialism. Like, Bernie
Yeah.
Sanders says everybody deserves a living wage and medical care. And people go, he's too radical. He's a communist. Then all of a sudden, a few people on the block go, and everybody's like, can we have some socialism? So, anybody? Anybody socialism? Can we? Like,
Yeah.
just like that,
Yeah.
they were all socialists.
Right, right. Yeah, well, at least those of us who, lead a somewhat normal workaday lifestyle are ready for that type of socialism at this point. Some have been ready longer than others, but the ones who stand to profit off of everything, and certainly a crisis, are doing just that. It's so fascinating how the playbook doesn't change. going back to like whether it's 9/11 or it's the crash of '08. The playbook is at the ready, and they follow it to a T, and it's not hard to predict. I couldn't help but think all of these workers, healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, just healthcare professionals in whatever capacity, even the retirees and students that are being called into duty. I can't help but, again, speaking to the playbook, if you look at 9/11, all of the quote unquote heroes are left in the lurch somewhat soon afterwards. So, they're praising everybody now, and they're calling them into duty and serve your country, and I think we know how this is all going to pan out when it's time to take care of these people.
Oh yeah,
if they're alive.
Yeah, ask all the 9/11 first responders who literally have to have a stand-up comedian go to Washington D.C. with a camera and a microphone and shame politicians into, I don't know, helping to treat their cancer.
Right. Yeah, I mean, thank God Stewart used his platform to do that, because that made a big difference. He pointed out it was literally an empty hall of Congress. I think, there was like one or two people there that were probably just stand-ins of some sort. And he had a room full of the 9/11 first responders, those who were still alive. And fortunately, it was effective theater, because that's the only thing they seem to respond to, right? If it's a PR hit, or if it's a threat to their office or a threat to their purse, that's what they respond to.
And I'm super stoked that he did it. I just, again, we're at the bottom end of the spiral where that's something that actually has to happen. Like again, I'm glad Jon Stewart went out and did that. The fact that he had to, because we're at that phase now where there's literally, hey, all those people on the pile that, you glamorized and, used video of as you were announcing, going to war and bombing the shit out of 3 million people. Like you were all rah, rah, rah. Then now all of a sudden everybody's like, they're sick. And you're like, but we moved on to the next war. And it's rather rinse and repeat.
That's literally what had to happen in order for anything to be done. Because somebody who has a corporate media platform, and, thankfully he used it. He was no longer on the Daily Show at that point, but at least he used the currency, the capital that he had accrued over the years to put them front and center. So, kudos to him.
So you got me thinking about something with that, and it cycles back. For a while we were running a campaign where we were getting a lot of content up on Joe Biden, way back in the primary, and I had sort of a philosophy, and I was panning it out to people. So I want to get your take on this, because you are very active on social media. I mean, I see you, on Instagram and Twitter, and you're always putting up video and clips. So I think you understand the power of social media. But so I was explaining that for this time in history, there's never been a time where the tail could wag the dog so easily, where people as individuals have so much social capital at their disposal, because there are so few journalists. The journalists have no researchers, and because it's a money siphon, and websites have to have, 80 articles a day for all the ads to hit and this and that. But it's gotten to the point now where if you make enough noise on social media, just as a person, as an individual, that you literally force the media to cover it because they have nothing else to write about. And there are like articles that come out every day, or video segments that come out on mainstream media every day, where it'll be like, is Joe Biden really trying to cancel Social Security? And they have that because 4 million people post the video of Joe Biden saying he wants to kill Social Security. So,
right.
Like as somebody who's on social media live, somebody who, for a living, you literally have a microphone and, for lack of a better word, a stage.
Well, now it's really my only platform, for the foreseeable future. Yeah, it is my stage.
Yeah, no comedy clubs now. Yeah. So again, but what's your thought on that, on how, on the social capital, and, do people have enough social capital that the tail can wag the dog, and are they using it properly? Are there better things people could do? Because you're like, I get a lot of shit on Twitch for being a boomer, even though I'm not a boomer, neither of you. Like, we're in the Gen X category, but everybody over
Right.
20 is a boomer on Twitch.
Yeah.
But for a couple of boomers, you and I both leverage social media a lot. What's your thought on that? On the tail wagging the dog and people being able to actually direct the media machine?
Well, I mean, I'll point to where you and I met. We met during Occupy Wall Street, where both of us were essentially, citizen journalists or whatever you want to call it. We were just documenting what we were observing, So that more and more has been necessary, and I'm sure, I've had this happen. I'm sure you've had it tenfold or more to what I've experienced, but you have actual media outlets contacting you saying, "Oh, can I post the thing that you just tweeted down at Zuccotti Park or on the Brooklyn Bridge?" Or, they're constantly, like, news sources are asking you for for your tweets or pictures or whatever it is. So, in the broad sense, yeah, it is good because it does somewhat democratize, the dissemination of information. So yeah, it depends on how people use that, of course. But I think more and more the younger generations are hip to the fact that the real stuff that's going on is not going to be on MSNBC or CNN. They probably get it 2 or 3 days later, if at all.
Are you sort of happy with the death cycle of terrestrial media and first wave media? Are you sort of, I mean, you came up on it. You've obviously, you've done like late night comedy shows, stuff like that. What's your preference?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I started comedy in the '90s, and it was still so much part of the paradigm of how you broke through. I did Conan and Letterman a bunch of times, and Comedy Central. That was kind of integral because it was the heyday of comedians breaking on Comedy Central, and they would run your special, over and over again. So it was great in terms of exposure. But I've also seen this kind of trend and passage of time where those things are largely irrelevant now. If a comedian, even if you get a late night set on Fallon or whatever it is, nothing really holds the weight that Letterman did back in the day. Certainly Carson before him, or even Comedy Central, where if you had a half-hour special, it would kind of break you to a larger audience. So I think it's a good thing though, because those platforms are kind of dinosaurs now, and certainly won't have any kind of radical bent or even interesting bent for that matter. Largely. It'll be very milquetoast, very bland, watered down, nothing that will surprise you, comedically or otherwise. So yeah, I kind of like the fact that, like I can live stream, whether it's on Instagram or whatever, just to kind of almost, somebody called it a comedy filibuster. I just talk for half hour, 45 minutes, and it's funny because as I do it, some of it winds up being like, I'm realizing as I talk, oh, that's a bit. Like what I just said was a bit that if I was performing, I would take it to the stage. But yeah, I'm kind of just throwing these things out now, and it's kind of fun because it is interactive and you see the comments, and it's a different paradigm, and I kind of like it because I always thought it was bullshit anyway that like the system has so much hold, and people don't realize it. I think they realize it with the products that are on their shelves that, Coke and Pepsi get I used to work at a supermarket, and like those corner displays, are always the big companies. But also with your entertainment and your media, like the ones that get the corner display and the proper shelf space are represented by the big agencies and managers and have big PR. It's the comedians that are not just because they're funny. I'm not saying they're not, but it's because there's a lot of money and machinery behind them.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So I actually, so you and I never actually talked about it. So I knew Dave back like before 9/11. Dave Attell. I used to
Yeah.
like him and Ben. I had a bunch of friends who were friends with them. I used to manage a bar down in the village. So I
Doesn't
used to,
surprise me that you knew Dave then.
yeah, exactly. So, when you're at like Veselka at 5 o'clock in the morning, two fist and pierogies when you're hammered, you look across the table and it's, David Tell's just like, and you're like, does life get no better? And
He's the best.
so like 20 years later, I turn around and I actually watched last night because I was thinking about it. So I watched all the episodes of Teacher's Lounge. And so it actually ties into a couple questions I had in the chat. So, like, Teacher's Lounge, I love it. And I love, like, most of the guys that you bring in through there. I shouldn't even say guys because women, too. I've seen Sharon on there a bunch of times. But, like, is that a show, like you look at doing that, is that something that you could actually pitch to network television or you could get on network television? Or is that something where you're like, fuck network television, I'm so glad I can just, write what I want to write, bring on the people I want to write, and just throw it on the internet and do my thing? Like, what's the, this?
Yeah. It was a combination of both of those dynamics. We created it. My writing partner and co-star Hollis James. We created Teachers Lounge. It's based on my own personal experience. I was an elementary school music teacher in New York City for 5 years. I graduated Queens College, and I taught music for 5 years. When I was pursuing comedy at night, that was my day job. So we decided to create this web series where I would play the music teacher and Hollis would be the janitor. And we're always just hanging out, killing time in the teacher's lounge. And then I would bring in my comedian friends to play various faculty members or people in the school. So like, for instance, David Tell was the school photographer. And that was one of our most fun episodes. He was great in that role. And, we had everyone from Lewis Black as the principal and Todd Barry as the librarian. We did 10 episodes. So to your point, it was great to have that freedom to shoot it exactly the way we wanted to shoot it, to cast it exactly the people we wanted to cast. So I just reached out to friends, Michael Che before he was on SNL, Judy Gold, Rachel Feinstein. So just like loads of great comedians who I know from the New York scene. And so that it enabled us to really see it through from conception to final completion without any like impediment of like corporate voices giving you notes or saying, well, we want to cast someone else, or this person's not an actor, or all this kind of, ridiculousness. So that kind of autonomy, I think, helped the final product. But that said, our goal was to make something that we were proud of and then try to pitch it, which we did eventually, but, without any successes. But we wanted to sell the show to a network or wherever. But, they gave us the runaround of like they already had a bunch of teaching shows or whatever, which to me is just like kind of a weird way of just couching. They don't want to, they wanted to say no, but give you a reason. I mean, there's a million cop shows, right? A million medical shows, but because they had 2 teacher shows, they can't have another one.
I counted it up the other day. The spring primetime schedule on the 4 major networks, just primetime 8 to 10, 5 days a week. 82% of all the shows are government, police, or police.
Is that right? 82%? Man.
Between your Law and Orders, your CSIs, your NCISs, now they have FBI, they have CIA, the Madam Secretary, they got fucking everything up on there.
I'm so glad you said that, because it's like I was aware that there were a lot, and of course, like, had a sense that, like, yeah, this is a lot of bullshit propaganda stuff. But 82%, wow.
Propaganda, it's worse.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah. Well, because all the upfronts got canceled this year. So sometimes I would do work on the upfronts, and all the networks had to cancel the upfronts because you have more than 50 people in a room. So they just kind of like released the schedules on paper. And I looked at them and I was like, holy shit, literally except for like the Thursday night comedy lineup on NBC or something. And then like a couple of random like days where they have the 8 and the 8:30 sitcoms. like Anthony Anderson's got a night, like stuff like that. It's all every fucking drama is a cop drama, a police drama, a medical police drama, a police medical drama, a federal cop drama. Like it's wall to wall.
You know they're going to milk the shit out of this pandemic too. They're going to have like so many, related stories to viruses and to, the way Law and Order would do, right? They take the headlines and immediately transfer it to the screen and dramatize. So yeah, they're going to get a lot out of this.
I'm sure they are. All right. So look, I know I didn't have you for too long. So real quick, I wanted to mention that I saw you on Instagram on Monday night, and you literally have like Jim Gaffigan up in your fucking Instagram, giving your little Teddy Grams. Can you tell everybody what you're doing? What you got a neat little project here to sort of pass the time every day while we're in lockdown. So
thanks, man. Well, thanks for watching it. Yeah, I've been doing a nightly live stream, like 5 nights a week on Instagram Live. I call it a Teddy Gram. So yeah, it's just basically me. It's kind of a bounce off of my podcast. I have a podcast called A Little Bit Me that you can find on iTunes and all that stuff. So yeah, this was just an outgrowth of that with all of the free time we find ourselves with. You kind of get creative and do all the things that have been on your to-do list for years. So yeah, I've been doing this live stream, and my comedy friends are popping by, which is fun. Jim is someone that I've known for 20 years, and I opened for him on the road. We tour together. So Jim happened to stop by the other night, and Todd Barry stopped by the night after that. So yeah, it's actually fun to catch up with my friends who I haven't seen. In some cases, Jim I saw about a month ago, but Todd I hadn't seen in several months, and who knows when we'll see each other again. So it's it serves like many purposes.
Yeah, well, straight up, like Beyond the Pale is like one of my favorites. Like and I'm old school because I had Eddie Murphy Delirious as like my all-time favorite live set for like decades, and then I made the mistake of going to see Bob Saget live once, and it changed my life. Just we could save that for another time. Where can they find you on Instagram, Ted? What's the IG?
Ted Alexandro, across the board, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. But yeah, Instagram is where I'm doing those nightly Teddy Graham live streams. So check those out. Those have been fun.
Nice. Ted, I'm stoked I got you to come by. You got to hang out on the Twitch with the kids. Hey,
yeah, buddy.
While you're in pandemic lockdown, seriously, anytime you want to come by, do an hour, shoot the shit, whatever, like, let me know. All I got to do is press buttons, and all this magic is at your disposal.
That sounds beautiful, man. Let's do it again soon, for sure. I'll take you up on that.
Sweet. I love it. I'll hit you up later. Everybody, Ted Alexandro.